When bad men vanish. What happens when the corrupt vanish, and the city starts to breathe again? When the men who once ruled the streets in fear now look over their shoulders, uncertain of the shadows that stalk them. And if they ever dare to return, they have no idea who's already waiting. Howard Pop Langston had seen a lot in his 76 years. Good years, bad years, and the kind of struggles only a black man in the Deep South could fully understand. But standing there outside the old Wells Fargo in South Atlanta, with a thick envelope clutched tight in his weathered hands, he felt something rare, relief. $4,200 in cash. It was everything he had managed to scrape together over the last 6 months. His roof leaked every time it rained. His medical bills were piling up like bricks, and his granddaughter's birthday was just around the corner. Pop had always been the kind of man who never let life get ahead of him. But lately, life had been running faster than he could keep up. He adjusted his old Braves cap, tucked the envelope deep into his coat, and started his slow walk home. His knees ached, but it was a familiar kind of pain. The kind you just learn to live with. That's when he heard it. The low, throaty growl of a police cruiser easing up beside him. Pop didn't need to look. He'd lived long enough to know trouble when it came creeping slow. The black and white squad car slid up the curb and stopped a few feet ahead, tires crunching on loose gravel. 2 officers stepped out. One was stocky, with a crooked little smirk. The other was lanky, with eyes that twitched like he was always waiting for something bad to happen. Officers Daniels and Russo. Pop kept walking. He wasn't in the mood for this. Not today. Hey, old man, Daniels called out, his grin widening like he'd found something funny. Pop stopped, drew a deep breath, and turned just enough to stay polite. Just heading home, officer, he said evenly. Russo's gaze flicked to the lump in Pop's coat pocket. His eyes narrowed. What's in the envelope, Pops? Pop's stomach clenched. He knew where this was going. My savings, he answered, calm but firm. Money I took out the bank. Daniels chuckled low, stepping closer like he smelled something he liked. Oh yeah, Daniels said. And you're sure it's yours? Pop's grip tightened. Yes, sir. It's mine. Without warning, Daniels snatched the envelope from Pop's hands. No hesitation. No shame. Just power. Pop's heart hammered against his ribs. Give that back, Pop said, his voice low but steady. That's everything I got. Daniels flipped through the bills, whistling. That's a lot of cash for an old-timer, Daniels said. Makes you wonder where it came from. Russo shrugged. Could be unreported income, Russo said, eyes shifting. Could be something worse. Pop's hands shook, but he kept his back straight. It's my money. I worked for it. Daniel's face darkened. You're getting awful loud, old man, he said, stepping in close, grabbing Pop's collar just enough to make a point. You resisting? Pop froze. He'd seen where this led. The answer was always the same. No, sir. Daniels held his stare a moment longer, then smirked, patting Pop's chest twice before letting go. You have yourself a good night, Daniels said. Russo pocketed the envelope as they climbed back into their cruiser. And then they were gone. Pop stood there on the sidewalk, his fists clenched so tight his knuckles hurt. His breath came hard, sharp. They had taken everything. He swallowed, reached into his pocket, and pulled out his phone with trembling fingers. There was only one number to call. He pressed the button. Son, Pop said, his voice steady even if his body wasn't. I need you. Thousands of miles away, in a place where the sun baked the earth into cracked red stone, Staff Sergeant Noah Grizz Langston sat in the back of a military transport truck. His uniform was stiff with dust. His face was streaked with sweat. His boots that had carried him through every war zone they had a name for, were worn through. Another mission. Another nameless operation. Another day in a place that wouldn't make the news. But that world stayed behind the minute his boots touched American soil. That was the deal. You left it behind. You came home. But when his phone vibrated, he already knew. Some battles don't stay overseas. Dad, his father never called unless it was serious. Pop's voice was calm, but there was something broken beneath it. They robbed me, Pop said. Noah's pulse slowed, not from fear. From focus. Who? He asked, his tone turning cold steel. The police, Pop answered. And the world went still. Noah shut his eyes, just long enough to process it. They took my money, Pop said, voice straining. Everything I had. Right outside the bank. Noah's jaw clenched. Did they put hands on you, he asked. No, Pop said, quieter now. But I can't pay my bills. Your niece's birthday is next week. Noah stared at the sand under his boots. His breathing was slow, measured. He'd felt this before, right before a mission. I'm coming, Noah said. And that was it. The plane landed at Hartsfield-Jackson. Noah wasn't here for a reunion. He wasn't home for hugs or handshakes. He had one objective: find them. He moved through the airport like a ghost in camo, quiet, smooth, with the controlled focus of a predator who already knows how the hunt ends. Daniels and Russo weren't ready, but they would be soon. At the Zone 3 precinct, the air smelled like old coffee, sweat, and bad decisions. Noah walked straight to the front desk, his eyes cold. Where's Daniels? The desk sergeant looked up, unimpressed. And you are? Noah Langston, son of Howard Langston. I want to know where that thief is. The room shifted. Conversation slowed. And then came the voice. Well, look who's making an entrance, Daniels said, stepping out from an office, his badge catching the fluorescent light. Noah turned, face unreadable. You took my father's money, he said. Daniels smirked. I don't know what you're talking about. Give it back. Daniels folded his arms. Or what? Noah's eyes narrowed. Or you find out why they called me the meanest Green Beret in the sandbox. The smirk faltered. For a moment, the entire room was silent. And then everything changed. The fight was over in seconds. Daniels went down hard. Russo tried to draw, but Noah was faster. By the time the rest of the precinct figured out what happened, Daniels and Russo were leading Noah to their squad car like sheep to slaughter. In the trunk, Noah found it all. Not just Pop's money. Stacks of cash. Bank bags. Evidence of years of theft. You boys been busy, Noah said, his voice like ice. Daniels and Russo said nothing. You're going to return every dollar, Noah continued. And then you're going to leave Atlanta. For good. And if we don't? Russo asked, his voice shaky. Noah smiled faintly. Then I'll find you. And they believed him. Later that night, Noah placed the envelope on his father's kitchen table. Pop stared at it for a long time before finally opening it. Every dollar was there. How? Pop asked. Noah shook his head. Don't ask. Pop studied his son's face, quiet. I'm proud of you, he said. And Noah nodded. Always, Pop. The city changed after that. Daniels and Russo were gone. The whispers said they ran. Some said they vanished. But those who understood knew one thing. Someone handled it. And no one wanted to ask who. Because some answers aren't safe. Greg Daniels sat in a cheap motel room 3 states away, staring at the door like it might fly open. Jake Russo had dropped his badge on his captain's desk the next day. Neither of them would ever forget. And neither would dare to return. On a quiet porch in South Atlanta, Noah Langston rocked back in his chair next to his father. You think they'll come back? Pop asked. Noah sipped his tea. No, he answered simply. Pop nodded. Good. And for the first time in a long time, the night felt still. Like the city had finally taken a breath. The end.